Hello, thank you to everybody that clicked on this video. As the title says, I cannot stop thinking about 50 Shades of Grey. And if you know me personally, which if you're watching this video you probably do, then I really have not for real been able to stop thinking about it. And I really wanted to put all of my thoughts into just one consecutive place so that way I don't ever have to think about this again. And if for some reason I want to talk to someone about this, then I have a reference of all of my notes, of all of my thoughts, and everything that has come over me as I've read this book. Because for me, this last month has been quite the journey. It took me, I think, about maybe 2 to 3 weeks to read the book. And it doesn't usually take me that long to read a book, especially a romance. But this was a lot to take in. So if you are listening to me talk about this, thank you. I hope that you learned something today. I hope that I enlighten you in some way, just as this book has tortured me a bit. So yeah, let's get into it. So essentially, I think it's important for me to discuss how I came across 50 Shades of Grey. Now, this is not my first time reading the book. I've actually read the entire series before. When I was about the ages of 14, 15, it was the first time that I actually read 50 Shades of Grey. One of the ways that I got introduced to the book was actually from my family. So my mom used to work at a senior center. And at that time, she was pretty much cool with the seniors that she would serve. And one of the seniors, had all 3 of the books. And she was so excited. She really enjoyed the books. She shared them with my mom. My mom brought the books home. My mom, my sister, and I, we all read the books together. And pretty much it was kind of cool. Like, we had our own little book club for a little while. So pretty much my mom would read a book first, then she would pass it to me, and then it'll get passed from me to my sister, and so on and so forth. And we would just continue to talk about the books until we all were done with them. So just as I said before, it was kind of like our own little book club. And it was pretty fun, I would say that. So that was cool. The other way that I got introduced to 50 Shades of Grey was really because it was all over everywhere. People were talking about it on the news. People were talking about it online. And at the time, I was a teenager with a smartphone and unrestricted internet access. So it was easy for me to see different discourse about the book. And pretty much that just gave me more intrigue to want to read the book when I was a teenager. At the time, I didn't have the access. Hence, my mom coming in with the books. And also for me, I've always just been very interested in like public discourse and the things that are popular at the moment and the things that people have opinions about. And for me, I like to be able to make my own opinions. I like to be able to hear what other people are saying and seeing if I agree with it, if I don't agree with it, if there's things that I just feel like, varies in my own opinion. So that was my reason for why I read these books. So now that you know a little bit of the background, that brings us into present day 2025. Well, really October 2025. It's November now. But essentially, like, since I've read it as a teen, I just, like I said, I've heard the different discourse. So there were people that really loved it and really liked it, and people that didn't. And for me, my initial my initial thoughts about the book was just very like middle of the road. I didn't feel like it was the best thing that I read. I didn't feel like it was the worst thing. I thought that it was okay. It wasn't like something that I would go and rave about to anyone. But, you know, I thought it was all right. So I'll give it that. But, you know, I just remember hearing people talk about it, people being like, I don't know, I just remember online that it was just a lot of backlash, at least to me from what I had seen at the time. I remember people who did BDSM being like, oh, you know, this doesn't represent us, this doesn't represent our community. I just remember people talking about it and saying that, you know, the relationship was actually pretty bad and that was actually pretty negative and was not a good representation of like, I don't know, of like BDSM relationships or just like bad relationship dynamics in general. And for me, you know, that's always been at the back of my mind because, like I said, I felt very middle of the road about the book. But at the same time, I was like 14, 15, so I wasn't going to pick up on a lot of the relationship dynamics and a lot of the ways that that people were saying that he was manipulating her in the beginning. So I've always wanted to kind of reread it to see if my opinion would change, to see if it will become stronger, if it will become weaker. I don't know. But yeah, so that's really my motivation of why I decided to reread this book. Okay, so before I dive into my thoughts about the book and about 50 Shades of Grey, if you don't know what it is, I'm gonna read you the literal book description that will be on the back of the book. I do not have the book physically. I borrowed it from the library through ebook, so I'm gonna read what's on the site there. When literature student Anastasia Steele goes to interview young entrepreneur Christian Grey, she encounters a man who is beautiful, brilliant, and intimidating. The unworldly, innocent Anna is startled to realize she wants this man, and despite his enigmatic reserve, finds she is desperate to get close to him. Unable to resist Anna's quiet beauty, wit, and independent spirit, Gray admits that he wants her too, but on his own terms. Shocked, yet thrilled by Gray's singular taste, Anna hesitates. For all the trappings of success, his multinational business, his vast wealth, his loving family, Gray is a man tormented by demons and consumed by the need to control. When the couple embarks on a daring, passionately physical affair, Anna discovers Christian Gray's secrets and explores her own dark desires. So essentially, to reiterate the book description that I just read, 50 Shades of Grey is about two people, Anastasia Steele and Christian Grey. Anastasia Steele is a young student. Christian Grey is an entrepreneur. They both meet together. They're both attracted to each other. And from that attraction, they decide that they want each other in an erotic way. And things just happen from there. You know, essentially, they are exploring a sexual relationship with each other. But it's not just any kind of sexual relationship in the sense of like a situationship or friends with benefits or whatever. No. It is a BDSM relationship. And if you don't know what BDSM is, I will explain that to you as well. But yeah, that's essentially the book. That description is essentially the book. Now, since you know the plot and essentially what happens in this book, I'm gonna break down different details about the book and the things that kind of struck me a little bit. So first, we're going to talk about the characters. So our main characters of the story are Anastasia Steele and Christian Grey. So literally, I can tell you everything that you need to know about these two quite simply because they're very one-dimensional. So with Anastasia Steele, she's 21. She just graduated from college. What did she graduate with? We don't know. It doesn't matter, okay? We just know that she graduated with something, okay? Right now, she lives in Portland with her roommate, Kate. She has a friend named Jose. Kate and Anna are going to move to Seattle for reasons. Why? We don't know. They're just going to move to Seattle. And yeah, like other characteristics, she's clumsy. She's kind of the girl next door, pretty unassuming, pretty regular. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's the way that she is. That's the way that she's described. I'm going to add my own personal characteristic, which is that she's dumb. And I hate to use this description, but honestly, she really does not think. There's so many moments in the book where she just doesn't use her brain. And for me, that equates to being dumb. Now, I will explain this further as we go into the video, but this is just a little initial taste for you guys. Oh, also, she has a mom that lives in Georgia. Her mom has been married like 3 to 4 times. Yeah. Her second stepdad is like her father because her father died when she was like a baby. So yeah, that's literally, in what I just told you guys, is literally all that we know about the character of Anastasia Steele. That's it. She has no motivations. She has no hobbies. She has no goals. Nothing. Just that. Just that. Okay. Now, we're gonna move on to Christian Grey. Okay. Now you would think like, okay, like there has to be something enticing about this man, right? Let me describe Christian Grey to you. Okay. So Christian Grey is a multimillionaire. He has his own company. We don't know what his company is. We don't know what it's about. That doesn't matter. It's just about him being a multimillionaire. Also, he's 27. So, yeah, he's a young multimillionaire, but also that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Okay? He has expensive hobbies. You guys already know because I just told you he's into BDSM. It takes money to be able to buy things like sex toys and to be able to create red rooms and all that stuff. Like that takes money. But not only does he like BDSM, but he also likes art. he also likes art. He likes flying because he can fly helicopters. He likes glide. Oh my gosh, he likes gliding, but he calls it soaring. Rich people activities. Yeah. Also, this is important as well. He was adopted. So he was adopted as a child. So things happen there. What else? Oh, and the biggest thing, how could I not mention this? Oh my gosh, should I mention this right now? Okay, I'll mention it. He was SA'd as a teenager. And that does play a role in the book, but not in the way that you would think. And I will continue to explain that. I keep saying that I will continue to explain it because I have to lay the foundation first. This is a 514 page book of just stuff. No plot, no real things happening, just stuff. Yes, sex is a part of the stuff, but there is other stuff. So I have to lay the foundation so that way when I get into my ranting, it's understandable. So just bear with me if you have lasted this long, please. Okay, I also think it's important to quickly mention some of the side characters because really, even though they exist, they don't exist. And I will continue to explain what that means. So, for one, there is her friend Kate. Not only is she her friend, but she's also her roommate. They both went to the same college, WSU, which I think is Washington State University. They both went to that college. They both graduated at the same time. Kate is actually the reason for why Anna met Christian Grey, but I'll get into that more in a bit. Anyways, Kate doesn't really exist. She only exists for Anastasia to talk to her about things that's happening with Christian. Anyways, also, Kate comes from a wealthy family, so Anna will do things like use her computer, borrow her clothes, things like that. Yeah, there's another character that is also Anna's friend. His name is Jose. Jose doesn't exist for any reason than to just lust on Anna. Like, he's just there. He likes her. She knows that he likes her, but she does not like him. And she just wants to be friends. But things happen and it just becomes weird. But anyways, yeah. As I mentioned, Anastasia, she has her mom and she has her stepdad. They don't really pop up like that, but they exist, I guess. And then what else? And then there's Christian's parents and his family. And that's really it. That's really the people in this book. Like 90% of the book is about Christian and Anna. And that's fine. It's just Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the book itself and what happens, especially from the beginning to about the middle of the book, because one, I think it's important to have the context, and then two, just to understand how this story came to be. Well, not how the story came to be, but more so how the story progressed. Now, from the very beginning, we're introduced to Anastasia Steele. Anastasia's getting up early in the morning to drive all the way to Seattle. Now, mind you, she's in Portland. So she's driving from Portland to Seattle to be able to interview Christian Grey. And she's interviewing him because her friend and roommate, Kate, oh, that kind of rhymes. Her friend and roommate, Kate, is on the school newspaper, their college newspaper. And pretty much, since Christian Grey is going to be the school's commencement speaker for the graduating class, her friend Kate got an interview with Christian Grey. But on the day of, she just got really, really sick. So she asked Anna to do the interview for her, and Anna agrees. So Anna drives out to Portland, and essentially the first chapter is just about her driving out to Portland and then her going to interview Christian Grey. She meets him, she's nervous, whatever, right? She literally falls in his office, like literally like a damsel in distress. She just falls in his office. He comes, to help her up. Then from there, they do the interview, right? Now, I also want to note that in this interview, she's using questions that Kate gave her, because remember, originally this is supposed to be Kate's interview. But she doesn't take any time beforehand, not even like a quick 5-minute Google search to find out who Christian Grey is. So literally, as she meets this man, she knows nothing about him, even though she went there with the purpose of interviewing him, right? So you would think that she would at least do the due diligence of just taking like I said, a 5-minute quick Google search, or a 5-minute look on Wikipedia, because I guarantee you, this man, if he was real, right? He's a multi-millionaire man. He's gonna have a Google page, he's gonna have a Wikipedia page. Like, it would be easy to just do like a quick swipe, be like, okay, who is this man? What does he look like? What is his business about? So on and so forth. She does not do that. She literally just shows up with the questions, and that's that. So essentially, the interview is all right. It's a little awkward because, just as I said, she doesn't know anything about this man. So she's literally essentially just reading the questions. He's kind of flirting with her a little bit. She's kind of giving it back a little bit. And things are kind of like going okay. But here's where things first twist. In this interview, we're still on chapter 1, by the way. In the interview, one of the questions that Kate wrote. Now, mind you, Kate's questions were already pretty unprofessional, because she was asking him a lot of personal stuff that, if you're just interviewing someone that you don't know in regards to them being your commencement speaker, it's a little weird to be asking such personal questions. So Kate's questions that Anastasia is reading is essentially like, oh, well, what's it like being adopted? Like, it's asking more interpersonal things about his business. But the big one, the big question is, are you gay? And this is where I say Anastasia is dumb, right? Because we all have cognitive abilities. Like, if you're watching this video, you have some kind of cognitive ability. So even if you have a note card and you're reading it, and as you are reading, you decide, oh, I don't want to ask that question, you can stop. You can be quiet, right? But no, she reads the question, and then she's immediately like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know. I didn't know that this was what she was gonna ask. I didn't know. These aren't my questions. Like, these, oh, okay, but you could still choose not to read something like that. Like, you already asked some other crazy questions, right? But you could choose. You can make the choice not to do that. She did not. And he's a little appalled, because it's like, how dare you? Because he's like, how dare you really question me in like my sexuality, right? Because what? But anyways, after that, they kind of just end the interview, and he kind of like flirts with her a little more. She leaves. And in her mind, she's like, okay, it's the last time I'm going to see this guy. I never have to see him again. I never have to worry about it again. Okay. So in the second chapter, it goes to Anastasia at her part-time job. And essentially, she works at like a DIY shop, like a home egg shop. Kind of like a Home Depot, but it's more of like a local store that's in Portland. So she works there. And as she's working, who else pops up at her job? None other than Christian Grey. Now, mind you, she is back in Portland. Christian Grey is set in Seattle, but she lives in Portland. And I want to emphasize this point that when they met, Christian Grey did not know anything about her besides her name and where she went to school. And I'm going to reiterate the point of her being dumb. Because as he comes into her job, right, he talks to her, he flirts with her again, he gets her to help him picking up things and buying things. And she never for once thinks like, how did this man find me? Like, she never stops to think like, okay, he knew nothing about me except my name and where I went to school. And now he's in an entire different city and state where I am to see me. That's some scary stuff. And this is only the very tip of the iceberg. It goes beyond that. Also, another point is that as he comes into her shop, not her shop, as he comes into her place of work, he's asking her to show him like certain supplies, right? And he buys them. So he gets things like tape, cable ties, rope, things like that, right? And she's thinking that he's just doing like home decor. But in my mind, I'm thinking like, this man is a serial killer, because not only did he find out where you work, but these are the type of supplies that people use to kill people, okay? Like that people use for kidnapping and all that stuff. What is this random man gonna do with rope and cable ties and tape and overalls? Like, okay, so essentially after chapter 2, when Christian meets Anastasia at her job and, puts the riz on her essentially, they do have a few more encounters with each other. It really is just more so for them to get more connected, more so of the point of them to, flirt with each other, get interested in each other, for him to hint at the lifestyle that he lives. And it's just more of a cat and mouse kind of game. And the reason that I say that is because Christian does actively pursue Anna for a little bit. It's a few days. Like I said, this book is within the span of like a month and a half at most. So he really does spend a few days kind of like flirting with her, pursuing her, and for a while she kind of like brushes it off. She can't really believe that he does like her, but he makes it clear several times that he does like her and that he is interested in her. And this is all before he really introduces the kind of lifestyle that he's really into. One of the ironic things about Christian's pursuit of Anna is that as he actively pursues her and actively shows that he likes her, he also tells her to push him away, which I personally think is a red flag, because how are you actively sending her expensive, rare books, coming to her job, coming to see her and rescue her at a bar? How are you doing these things, but at the same time telling her, oh, I'm not someone you should be with, oh, I'm dangerous, or oh, I'm this, or oh, I'm that? Why do you keep popping up then? She's not coming after you. She would not have reached out to you because she wouldn't have had no way to after that interview. You keep coming into her life and you keep pursuing her. And that is crazy to me. So from them having a few moments of being together, essentially, Anna does decide to give in. She decides to kind of take him up on his offer to see what his lifestyle is about. And that's how we kind of get introduced, and that's how she gets introduced into his world of BDSM. Okay, so let's talk about BDSM. So, there's not really a lot of moments in the book where they refer to the entire acronym of BDSM, but it is mentioned a few times, and that is what they are doing in their relationship. So I just want to give a little insight into what BDSM is in the way that it was actually portrayed within the book, because there are similarities and there are discrepancies. So BDSM is essentially just a sexual practice. It's something that people do sexually, but it doesn't come up in terms of control like in the way that Christian Grey uses it. That is a completely different thing. I'm going to read an article here from verywellmind.com, and pretty much it goes over the basics of what BDSM is and how it's typically done amongst people. So here it says that BDSM is a highly intentional, safe, caring, and consensual variety of sex acts that allow individuals to expand the boundaries of their sexuality. So it also says here, to simplify, BDSM stands for bondage, which is physically restraining or which is physically restraining a partner during sex, such as with handcuffs, cords, or some other material or method. Dominance, exerting power or control over a partner during a sexual experience. Submission, being dominated during sex or willingly submitting to the power or control of a sexual partner. Sadomasochism, which is supposed to be the M part, consensually inflicting or receiving pain or humiliation. So all of that is within BDSM. So essentially in this book, they are doing BDSM acts, but a lot of times with BDSM, there is a lot of emphasis, as I said in the very beginning, about it being intentional, safe, caring, and consensual. Consent, oh my gosh. Consent is so important, okay? And this book gets very shaky in regards to consent. A lot of times for people who do BDSM, it is built upon, acts of trust. That's where the parts of the intentionality and the safety and the care and all of that stuff comes in, because if you don't have that trust with your partner, then how are you gonna be comfortable doing these kinds of acts? All right, so let's talk a bit about their relationship. Yeah, so this is really Anna and Christian's first relationship. And the ironic thing is that even though for Christian, he's very experienced sexually, he's very experienced in the BDSM sense and the BDSM world, he hasn't actually had a romantic relationship. And from the way that he explains it in the book, a lot of his previous relationships were really more so agreements, like the one that he's trying to make with Anna. And it's really based on the BDSM aspect. It's not really about, romance. It's not really about love or romantic affection or anything like that. And if that's the kind of thing that someone is into, that's fine. But that is not what Anna is into. Because for Anna, this is her first in everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. She has never had a boyfriend, never been on a date, never been kissed, never had sex, never had sex in any iteration. So, not even in the sense of self pleasure or experimenting in other ways. She has no experience, nothing at all, like genuinely just pureness. And that is fine on its own as well, but when you mix these two together, it does not make a good combination. And it's just, it is, they're both on two very different sides of the spectrum, and it does not blend together well in the story because the author, E.L. James, she keeps making a point about it being a love story where they just have a lot of kinky sex. But these weird relationship dynamics are introduced because of the way that she is writing it. You know, given that she is so inexperienced, Christian is able to take control of her in many ways and manipulate her in many ways. And honestly, I know that Anna, the character, really went along with a lot of things and really felt strong bonds to Christian because he was her first in everything. And honestly, I don't know what to think of that. Like, I don't know how to interpret that kind of message, whether it was an intentional message or not. Yeah, so given that they are each other's first relationships, there's a push and pull pretty much within the entire book about what both of them want. Because essentially, Anastasia, she wants a conventional relationship. She wants him to be, you know, her boyfriend. She wants him to, you know, she wants to be able to go out on dates with him. She wants to be able to hang with him. She wants to be able to talk to him. She wants to be able to introduce him to her friends and her family and all that stuff. The conventional things that you will want in a relationship, you know, from your boyfriend. And for him, all that he really has the capacity for right now is this BDSM relationship. He's not really interested in the romantic parts. Now, he is willing to give her a little bit, but really it comes, the way that plays out in the book is that it comes in service to him. He gives her a little bit of what she wants, so that way she can be more willing to be his submissive. And I want to make this note that in the book it talks about how he has had 15 submissives prior to Anna. But she's special. She's special because she's, not only is she so inexperienced, right? So it's kind of like he gets to be her everything from the jump. So I think that is enticing to him, and it is shown to be enticing to him in the book. But it's also like she's the exceptional one. Like, you know, he can't get away from her. You know, he constantly asks her in the book, like, oh, what are you doing to me, right? But she's not doing anything besides just existing. But I think it's the idea of Now, I know that not every man has this kind of thought, but there are men out there that get off on the idea of taking a woman's virginity, taking her purity, taking all of those things, right? Being the first and everything. There's a certain bragging rights that comes with that, and it does get mentioned in this book. So, also, it's important to make this point. Really, the book itself takes the span of like a month to maybe at most a month and a half. So their relationship goes by really quickly. There's a lot that they do really quickly. And they get very invested in each other really quickly. Because like I said, this really takes course within the span of like a month to a month and a half. And for me, I find it funny because it's just like, how can you really know someone in like a month and a half? How can you really fall in love with someone in like a month and a half? You know, even though they get so emotionally invested in each other, it's still like you don't really know that person. And even really, their relationship has really been like a month in itself, because like the first 2 weeks really of them interacting with each other, it was kind of more sporadic, like here and there, rather than it being a consistent day-to-day thing that happens once she agrees to be his submissive. One of the main issues is really the wealth disparity that happens between Christian and Anna. As I said in the beginning, Christian is a multi-millionaire entrepreneur. He has his own business. He has his own company or companies. Like I said, that's not really expanded on. But you know, he has connections, and wealth gives you a specific type of power, especially in America, and especially not only in the economic life that was existing back then, but the economic life that exists now. Anna is not wealthy by any means. I don't think she's destitute. She's not like super duper poor, but there's a lot of resources that she does not have. And Christian plays on this. There's a lot of times that he gives her expensive gifts and he gives her lavish gifts, and it's under the guise of being romantic, but really it comes across as controlling. For example, Christian gives her a cell phone and he gives her a laptop, right? Top of the line at the time, right? He gives her a brand new MacBook that isn't even out on the market yet. And he gives her a BlackBerry. Mind you, this is 2011, so Blackberries were the thing back then. And with these things, even though he's giving them to her under the guise of it being for her, really, you know, it's one ways for him to communicate with her, you know. And then two, you know, he uses it to track her. I mean, he already tracks her in other ways, so why not give her something that she's gonna hold on to all the time where he can easily track her? That's a whole other thing. But yes, that happens. Also, he gifts her a car because he doesn't like the car that she had. It wasn't good enough to him, so he gives her a new car. And he tells her that it's her car. Now, here's the thing that I will say about, you know, the wealth dynamics in a relationship. Now, we're going to assume that her name is not on the car note. If he really felt some kind of way and really wanted to be mean to Anna, he could easily have the car repossessed. Now, that does not happen in this book, but there's a possibility that could, you know, and it does happen in the real world. So it's very hard, at least for me, to read something like this and disconnect and just be like, Oh, well, he got her a car. Yay. I hinted at this a little bit earlier, and I did talk about this a little bit earlier in chapter 1, but he does track her. And she does not know how he tracks her, but he does. And he goes on even so much to say that when it comes to their discussion around the contract, if she does not follow the things that they agreed to within their contract, he would know. She does ask him, like, how would you know? He does not say, but he would know. So that means if she agrees to this contract, let's say, for instance, one day, if she decides that she doesn't want to work out with the trainer one day, he would know. How would he know? We don't know, but he would know. If she does decide to have a snack, let's say she goes to the movies with one of her friends and she decides to have some popcorn and some M&Ms, even though that's not permitted, he would know. And that is scary. That's scary beyond, that's scary behavior, you know. Also, he knows her information without her having to tell him anything. He knows about her parents. He knows about where she lives without her having to tell him. She never told him about where she lives. He just knew. He was able to drop her off home one time, even though she didn't tell him where she lived. He knew the names of her parents when he met them, even though she never told him her parents' names. And this goes on and it increases. There's even a point in the book where she takes a trip to visit her mom in Georgia, and he pops up in Georgia, meets with her and her mom where they're having dinner at without her knowledge, and addresses her mom as like hello and all of that stuff, even without her having to tell him. I don't think I need to explain that any further about how creepy and scary and dangerous that is. Now, I'm going to make the point, I'm going to talk more about BDSM in a moment, but you know, that is a big part of their relationship. And before they even really start to have negotiations about their contract, he gets her put on birth control. Now, mind you, BDSM is really important to build trust. It's really important to get consent, and it's really important to be willing participants in whatever is going to happen and whatever you guys want to do. But when it comes to consent, he tells her what she's going to do and she just goes along with it. So for example, like I just said, he gets her put on birth control, right? Their discussion about it is simply him saying, oh, you know, are you on birth control? She says no. And he's like, well, I'm going to fly out OBGYN. She's going to come and see you. You can pick the type of birth control you want, but you're going to get on birth control because he doesn't like to use condoms. And that's that. And that's that. Just, there's no discussion. There's no, oh, but what if I want to use a condom? No. You're on birth control. And that's that. And literally the next day, the literal next day, after they had that discussion, she was on birth control. There's another aspect to their relationship that I do think is weird. I feel like a lot of times, especially near the beginning of the book, when he's introducing her to the BDSM lifestyle, their relationship dynamic to me doesn't come across as a submissive and dominant dynamic, but it comes across more as a father-daughter dynamic. And that is really uncomfortable to read. And the reason why I say that is because there's a few moments in the book where he is actively controlling her. The basis of the contract is about her giving complete control to him. But there's moments where he really gets on her when she doesn't do something that he wants her to do. So, for example, there's a moment that they have after they, do an act, and they're eating like breakfast. And as they're eating breakfast, she doesn't really want to eat a lot. She's not really hungry. Her nerves are up. She's just not really in the mood to eat. He doesn't accept this. He yells at her to eat so much that she gets intimidated and starts eating. And to me, that felt very, very weird. He goes on to explain that, like, he has a weird thing with food and that it's important for, them to eat the meals that are made and for them to clean their plates. Yeah. It is, now mind you, this is before she agreed to be his submissive. So it's just red flags waving all around. But hey, this is what she signed up for. Yeah, but even just with that example, like, it just even goes on, beyond that. Like I said, just the entire basis of their contract is him asserting his control over her. But like I said, to put it in a weird perspective, like a fatherly, daughterly kind of way. And that is uncomfortable. This is another big aspect of their relationship that I think is highly problematic, which is that they both break each other's boundaries. Both of them don't respect their own boundaries and they don't respect the boundaries of each other. So I will give some examples. Literally in the beginning of the book, Christian tells Anna that he's not really going to do anything with her unless she agrees to be his submissive. So he tells her that he's not going to kiss her, he's not going to touch her, he's not going to do anything like that unless she agrees to be his submissive. Well, he does not stick to that. There was a moment that they had where, after they were coming from doing the pictures for the interview, they are in an elevator together. They're going down the elevator. I guess they just started to get excited with each other, and they start making out with each other. Now, mind you, this is literally as he was telling her that he wasn't going to do anything with her. And he makes out with her in an elevator. As for Anna, there's many moments where she just breaks her own boundaries in the sense of trying to get closer to Christian. And for me, I don't enjoy that. I think one of the most egregious moments where she broke her own boundaries, it was essentially when her and Christian were having a moment. They were, getting ready to do their sexual activities. And she wanted to know more about him because, he has these weird quirks outside of the BDSM stuff. Like, he doesn't want her to touch him when they are being intimate. He doesn't want her to, he always grabs onto her hands. There's different things like that. So essentially, she's trying to get to know more about him, and she's trying to figure out why he is the way he is. Now, he doesn't really want to tell her why he is the way he is. So they decide to come to an agreement, which is that Christian is allowed to spank her for this time that they're doing it. And after that, he will provide more information about himself. Now, I say that this is her breaking her own boundaries because she tells Christian repeatedly that she does not like to be spanked. She does not enjoy it. She's uncomfortable by it. But yet she uses spanking as a bargaining chip to get information about him. And that's a problem. And this continues on throughout the book. There's many times where they say that they won't do something or they would do something and they do the complete opposite. And to me, how can you build a relationship of trust off of that? How can you establish respect? I think respect is very important in a relationship. How do you have respect for each other when you don't respect your own boundaries enough to be able to stick to them? How do you expect someone else to respect you and your thoughts and your feelings and your boundaries if you can't stick to it? And it leads to it just being an overall negative relationship. But this is what happens. This is what we get. Hey y'all, it's Editing Cast here, and I just want to take a quick moment before I share this part of the video. So what I'm about to show you guys is an interview from E.L. James that she did with Barbara Walters. I really wanted to include this interview in the video because I felt that not only did it kind of give a bit of the history with 50 Shades of Grey, but it also showed her perspective about the book, and therefore I can show my perspective, and I love sharing my opinion. So I hope that you guys enjoy this section as well. So now I am going to play an interview that E.L. James did with Barbara Walters.
Welcome back. I would like to start this segment with a confession. I have read all 3 volumes of 50 Shades of Grey, and I'm hoping there will be a 4th. There, I said it. Lock me up. Just don't tie me up. As you are about to see, it can be uncomfortable to talk about this sexy book with its author, Erica Leonard, better known as E.L. James. I mean, confession may be good for the soul, but what about submission? This year, there was one book making news.
It's an erotic novel called 50 Shades of Grey.
It was hot. Fantasy. Just don't want to put it down.
50 Shades of Grey is the fastest-selling paperback of all time. This summer, one book sold per second.
Thank you.
Translated into 51 languages, the book and its 2 sequels have made masochism mainstream. On the surface, it's a typical romance novel. Shy virgin swept off her feet by handsome billionaire. But wait, the billionaire likes it rough.
Okay, wait. I don't think that has to be a typical love story. I don't know. Am I missing something here? Okay.
Is in bondage and submission. The woman holding readers captive, author Erica Leonard.
I have to fess up, this is my fantasy. And, you know, if other people like it, great.
Like it, they love it.
Hot.
Especially those steamy sex scenes, complete with handcuffs, whips, and a red room of pain. Becca Bateau narrates the audiobooks.
There is no bedding, just a mattress covered in red leather. He's got a red room of pain, and he wants to make me his sex slave. Without taking his eyes off me, he gets up from the bed and gathers both sets of handcuffs. He grasps my left leg and snaps one cuff around my ankle.
You don't look like a woman who knows about whips and bondage and masochism. Where did that come from?
I'd read some stuff on the internet, and also I had some books. And I thought, what would it be like if you met somebody who was into this lifestyle and you didn't know anything about it, and would you want to do it? And I just decided to explore that, really.
Did you
See, that concept in itself is not a problem, right? Just as she said, if you met someone who's if you met someone who's interested in this kind of lifestyle and they wanted to introduce you to it, what would you do, right? Like that, all of that is fine. But it's just the problematic way in which this is introduced, the ways that he manipulates Anastasia, the way that he attempts to control her, because it's not just about the sex, you know, it's not just about the BDSM, like it's complete, utter control, you know, and it's a manipulative relationship, and dare I say, an abusive one. And that is the thing that just, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. Okay.
You do research other
yes.
than reading?
Yes.
Could you be more explicit?
No.
I
had fun. I had a lot of fun.
Okay, let
doing
me put
this.
it another way. You've been married for 25 years. Has your marriage improved?
I'm very blessed with my husband. We get on very, very well.
I'll try again. Has anything about this book changed or affected your marriage?
Not especially.
Your husband wasn't embarrassed? He wasn't afraid
No,
people
not
would
at all.
think
No.
that he did this to you?
No, not at all. I don't think that ever occurred to him.
Did he do any of this to you?
Barbara, what do you think?
I think he didn't. Did he?
I'm not saying anything.
Why initials? Why not your name?
Well, it took me about 2 minutes to come up with my pseudonym.
4 years ago, Erica was unknown, working in television production in London. Inspired by the Twilight series, she began writing fan fiction about Bella and Edward under the name Snow Queen's Ice Dragon. Bella became Anna the Virgin. Edward became Christian the Billionaire. Kill the Vampires, Add the Handcuffs, and 50 Shades of Grey was born. In it, Christian makes Anna sign a contract that controls most aspects of her life.
That's a misconception. As I'm going to assume that I've stated at some other point in this video, because I've done this in parts, that is a misconception. She actually does not sign the contract. She gives him a verbal agreement that she will be his submissive, but she never puts actual pen to paper. But let's keep going. Listen.
Dominant and the submissive agree and acknowledge that all that occurs under the terms of this contract will be consensual. The submissive will agree to any sexual activity deemed fit and pleasurable. She will do so eagerly and without hesitation. Failure to comply with any of the above will result in immediate punishment.
Why do you think so many of your female readers like the idea of someone controlling them in the bedroom?
I think there's so much shame surrounding sex. If you're tied up, then you cannot, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
You can't resist.
You can't resist.
And he has a handcuff.
And you're not responsible for your own actions, and then you can enjoy whatever's happening to you. And
Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Wait, she just... Hold on, let me make sure I got this right. Let me replay this part.
Why do you think so many of your female readers like the idea of someone controlling them in the bedroom?
I think there's so much shame surrounding sex. If you're tied up, then you cannot, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
You can't resist.
You can't resist.
And he has a handcuff.
And you're not responsible for your own actions, and then you can enjoy whatever's happening to you, and you have less shame.
I understand that. Do you think that when...
Okay, I think that being tied up during a sexual act can be interpreted in many ways. In this book, her being tied up is in the way that she mentioned, like her relinquishing, and when I say her, I mean Anna, relinquishing control, but it feels wrong. It feels very wrong, because to me it's like, in the way that it's represented in this book, it feels very coercive. It doesn't feel a lot like I don't know, because Anna is a willing participant, but there's so much of the hesitation that she has and the innocence that she has that it's hard to fully get behind it. It feels very weird. Okay.
Women want to be submissive?
I think sometimes, yeah, I think they do, yeah.
You have 2 teenage sons.
I do.
15 and 17.
Yes.
Have they read the books?
No, Mommy and a sexy book, it just doesn't compute. So no, they haven't read it.
Do you think this book is pornographic?
I don't think these books are pornographic, no. It's a love story, a passionate love story. People fall in love, they have sex. It's very simple.
So sweet, this book.
It's a sweet book.
Yeah, 50 Shades of Grey.
Sweet.
One of the sweetest books you will read, right?
Okay. Okay. I will reiterate my point that I said near the beginning of this book. I mean, the beginning of this video, which is that I don't take this book seriously. She said herself, this is a love story, and they just have a lot of sex. I mean, technically, she's not wrong. But the problem is that she included all of these elements that are problematic. You included him manipulating her. You included him coercing her. You included his own issues with abuse and his previous trauma and all that stuff that brings more weight to the book rather than it just being, oh, it's just a love story. It's just a love story where they just have sex. What? Like... Okay, now let's discuss the contracts. Now notice I said contracts because there's 2 that Anastasia is presented with at the beginning of their sexual relationship. There's only 1 that is seriously talked about though, and that is the wrong one in my opinion. Now before we get started, if you're wondering what this is my emotional support plushie. Which I think I may need for this section. So, Anna is presented with 2 contracts in 50 Shades of Grey. So the main one that is typically discussed is the contract, which pretty much details what their sexual relationship is going to be like, what their roles are as dominant and submissive, what he expects from her, what she can expect from him, and essentially the ways that he wants to control her, because that's really what it's about. I am not going to read the entire contract because it is entirely too long. There are a lot of pages in that contract, and I'm going to spare myself and I'm going to spare you guys, but I will give you the essence of what it's about. So their contract is essentially broken into several parts. It talks about them making sure that they have a clean bill of health, like, you know, that they don't have any sexual diseases. It talks about the things that they're going to do, you know, the ways that they're going to experiment with each other. It talks about what she can expect from him as a dominant and how essentially his role is to not only introduce her to different sexual things that's supposed to be for her pleasure, but also he's supposed to make sure that he takes care of her in the end, and that, you know, he does no real harm to her and no real trauma, and that if it is done, then he takes the steps to rectify it. Her role as a submissive is essentially to just, well, she has to obey his commands. She has to obey the things that he wants to do. She has to let herself go in him and essentially just trust that he's going to do right by her. There is a really interesting phrase that keeps coming up, not only in the contract, but really within their discussions about their roles in BDSM. And it talks a lot about him as a dominant needing to train her and guide her. And there's a lot of emphasis on that frequently throughout the book. Just the training and the guiding. You know, he's training her on how to be a good submissive. He's guiding her on how to take the things that he wants her to take. You know, I will leave that up to the imagination. But there's a lot. There's a lot of that in this book. They do go over safe words very briefly, which is a very important thing when it comes to BDSM relationships. Safe words essentially just lets the person know, typically the dominant, know, you know, if they're pushing you too far, if you can't handle something. But it's a very quick moment. It's bigger with people who do BDSM regularly. It's kind of like a little flitter of a moment in their contract, but it's there. So it goes on, like I said, this is a long contract. It goes on to even talk about, you know, hard limits, which is the things that they definitely won't do. It talks about soft limits, which is the things that they are hesitant about, but are willing to do. But all of that doesn't really matter to me. I mean, it matters in some sense, but it's inconsequential to the most important parts, which is, why is there so much noise right now? Okay. The most important parts to me in their contract is the talk of rules. Now, it is important to note that these rules are for Anastasia as the submissive. Christian as the dominant doesn't really have rules. He has like kind of little guidelines, I guess you could say, but it's not like hard rules. And with these rules, they are used and enforced to control Anastasia. So let's talk about them. Now I'm going to read you a little bit. So the very first rule, obedience. The submissive will obey any instructions given by the dominant immediately without hesitation or reservation and in an expeditious manner. The submissive will agree to any sexual activity deemed fit and pleasurable by the dominant, expecting those activities that are outlined in hard limits. She will do so eagerly and without hesitation. So if she don't want to do that, if there's something that oh my gosh, if there's something that she does not want to do, it does not matter, because she's supposed to do so eagerly and without hesitation. Now this is rule number 1, obedience. Let's continue. Rule number 2, sleep. The submissive will ensure she achieves a minimum of 8 hours of sleep a night when she is not with the dominant. Okay, let's continue. Now this is where I'm out. Before I read this one, now I would never, let me clarify, I would never be in the position of being a submissive. I don't think I'll be in a position of being a dominant either, but if someone presented me with a contract like this is where I would hit the door, okay? So, food. There are rules for food, y'all. Okay, food. The submissive will eat eagerly to maintain her health and well-being from a prescribed list of foods. Okay, here's where I say no. The submissive will not snack between meals with the exception of fruits. There's no way. For me, there's no way I'm a snacker, okay? I carry snacks with me all the time. I get hungry often. I do eat meals, okay? But I do need a little snack. I need a little pick me up sometimes. Have you ever just had a bad day and you just come home and you have ice cream waiting for you and you're like, oh, the day was bad, but the ice cream makes it better. You mean to tell me if I have a bad day, I can't have my ice cream? There's no way. There's no way. There's no way. That's okay. So like I said, for me, okay, I'm not even done. We're only on rule 3. Okay, let's continue. Okay. Rule 4. Clothes. During the term, the submissive will wear clothing only approved by the dominant. The dominant will provide a clothing budget for the submissive, which the submissive shall utilize. The dominant shall accompany the submissive to purchase the clothing on an ad hoc basis. If the dominant so requires, the submissive shall, during the term, wear adornments the dominant shall require. In the present, oh my gosh, wait. Wait. Okay, I can do this. Okay. Okay, wait, let me start. Wait, the submissive shall, during the term, or adornments, the dominant shall require. In the presence of the dominant at any other time, the dominant deems fit. Yeah, so he's gonna go shopping with her for clothes. He's gonna make sure that she looks good. Okay. All right. Exercise. The dominant shall provide the submissive with a personal trainer 4 times a week in hour-long sessions at times to be mutually agreed between the personal trainer and the submissive. The personal trainer will report to the dominant on the submissive's progress. Okay? Personal hygiene and beauty. The submissive will keep herself clean and shaved and or waxed at all times. The submissive will visit a beauty salon of the dominant's choosing at times to be decided by the dominant and undergo whatever treatments the dominant sees fit. All costs will be met by the dominant. At least it's going to pay for it. Okay. Personal safety. Not in the way you would think. Let's talk about it. Personal safety. The submissive will not drink to excess, smoke, take recreational drugs, or put herself in any unnecessary danger. Okay. Now, when I think of personal safety, like yes, that's a part of it, right? Like, you know, you do want to take care of yourself. You do want to make sure you're clear-minded and all of that stuff. But I was thinking he was going to say, like, you know, like self-defense classes or something like that. But I guess that wouldn't work because then she could use that on him. But anyway, and the last rule, we finally made it, y'all. The last rule, personal qualities. The submissive will not enter into any sexual relations with anyone other than the dominant. The submissive will conduct herself in a respectful and modest manner at all times. She must recognize that her behavior is a direct reflection on the dominant. She shall be held accountable for any misdeeds, wrongdoings, and behaviors committed when not in the presence of the dominant. Okay. And there is a special note here that says, failure to comply with any of the above will result in immediate punishment, the nature of which shall be determined by the dominant. Now you may ask, what's the punishment? Let me tell you. Okay, so here are the various forms of punishment that Anastasia will receive if she breaks any of these rules. Now look at my plushie as I read these. Hopefully this will make things easier, okay? So these are the methods of punishment for Anastasia Steele. Spanking, whipping, biting, genital clamps, hot wax, paddling, caning. Now, I did not know what caning was before this, but let me tell you, it is using an actual cane to hit someone with. So keep that in mind. Nipple clamps, ice, like the ice from the freezer, ice, and other types of methods of pain. There we go. So if she breaks any of those rules, that's what she has to look forward to. So yeah. Now, I know that this has been a long video, but I do want to bring this back. At the beginning of this section, I did mention that there were 2 contracts. What I just read you guys was the contract. It's the main one that everyone talks about. It's the main one that is familiar with the book. However, this contract, to me personally, doesn't matter in the grand scheme. One, because it has no real legal standing. So whether she decides to sign the contract or not, it really doesn't matter in a legal sense. And also, I'm not sure if I mentioned this yet, but she never actually physically signs the contract. She does give him a verbal agreement stating that she would, be his submissive and that she would try out with him, but they never actually sit down and actually sign on their actual contract like this, that they would do this with each other. Also, if anyone is curious, she doesn't really push back on a lot of the contract because really she doesn't really know what she's getting into. The only thing that she does really give pushback for is that the food thing, which I agree on. She, doesn't want to be regulated on food, which I agree on. And instead of her exercising 4 times a week, she just wants to do it 3 times a week. That's the only real pushback that she gives. But other than that, she's kind of game for everything else. But, so I say all that to say that even though this contract here is important, there is a bigger one that's important that isn't focused on. And to me, it's the NDA. Now, the contract itself is brought up, a few times, but it really goes into detail in chapter 11. In chapter 6, that's where the NDA is introduced, signed, and then immediately disregarded essentially for the rest of the book. So with chapter 6, when he is first starting to tell her about the BDSM lifestyle that he's into, he does have her sign the NDA. Now, he presents it to her. She reads it a little bit, but she doesn't really give it much consideration because she's like, one, I'm not really going to want to talk about this with anyone. I don't really have people talk about it like that too anyway. And yeah, also with this NDA, just pretty much states that she can't talk to anyone about their relationship. She can't talk to anyone about the things that they do, about the things that they talk about really anything about their relationship. People can know that she's with him, but they can't know what she does with him. They can't really know about him in their relationship interpersonally. Yeah, there's several reasons why the NDA is super important. One, because it really limits her on who she can talk to, because she can't talk to anyone. Now that she signed an NDA, she did it with no problem. She just signed it right away. She can't talk to anyone. And this comes up several times in the book. She has moments that she would confide in her friends, and she would just be like, hey, I'm going through stuff with him, and the friend would be like, well, what type of stuff are you going through with him? And she can't say because she signed an NDA. There was a moment, like I said, when she visits her mom in Georgia. Her mom is trying to figure out, like, hey, what's going on with you? How are you feeling? All this stuff. She can't say because she signed an NDA. And maybe I should have said this earlier, but for someone who doesn't know, an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. And it's pretty much like where you just, depending on who makes the contract, there's certain things that you can't talk about. And if you do talk about them, then there are legal repercussions, which is my other point, which is that there are legal repercussions in an NDA. And from what I understand in their NDA, he doesn't state what those legal repercussions would be, but I'm going to make my own assumptions. Now, for Anastasia, like I said, she doesn't come from wealth. She doesn't have, like, you know, any assets. So, like, if she did something that really broke the boundaries of their NDA, he can't, like, it's not like he's gonna come and, you know, try to take assets from her that she doesn't have. But the way that I can see it being used is just to keep her limited from opportunities. Because there is a part of the book where she does try to get a job in publishing. Now, Christian Grey is connected to different publishing houses in Seattle. She is actively trying to get a publishing job in Seattle. So if for some reason, let's say she got a publishing job under a company that she didn't know that Christian was connected to, and she ended up, you know, spilling the beans to someone or it got out or things happened, then, you know, he can really destroy her in that way. He can destroy her career. He can destroy her opportunities. So even though it's not the same financial liability up front, it can lead to those type of issues in the future. So to me, I feel like the NDA is scarier than the contract itself. But hey, what do I know? You know, I am not a lawyer. I've never been in this position, so who knows? But yeah. But also, the NDA really does, like, play a big part in her mind, because there's just, like I said, there's many moments where she does want to talk to, you know, her friend and be like, hey, I'm going through this, you know, but she can't. It literally stops her, and she's literally like, you know, I can't explain this to her. I can't say this to her. And it's perplexing, but here we are. Also, here's another note about the contract. It's fascinating how Christian really pursued Anna and was really like, hey, you know, this is what I'm into. I want to do this with you, right? He really makes the point of telling her that they can negotiate. He wants her to do research so that way they can talk about it. She can become more knowledgeable and they can really, like, go back and forth on what they both really want, right? However, when she does present him with things that she doesn't like, he instantly dismisses it. So for instance, there's a part where she does talk about, I believe, I can't remember if it's the spanking or the canning or the flogging. It was something. It was one of those things. She did tell him, I believe it was spanking. She did tell him that she doesn't like the idea of being spanked. She doesn't like spanking, right? And essentially he tells her, like, well, this is a part of it. So you just got to get used to it. Now, mind you, this is supposed to be a negotiation between them two. This is supposed to be a contract that they both meld into what they want, but it doesn't happen that way. And this is really representative of their entire relationship. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. I can't imagine being pursued by a man, them enticing me into something that they want, only for them to then fight with me about it. I can't imagine, but I know that it happens. It wouldn't be me, but it happens. So. Okay, my emotional support plushie is back because we are finally going to talk about the sex scenes. Now, there are a lot of sex scenes within this book. There are copious amounts of it. And I knew that before I started rereading it again. However, I have to admit that this is the first time that I have read a romance and I have actively hated the sex scenes. Each time a sex scene was coming up, I dreaded it. I internally cringed, okay? And now, mind you, I am someone that reads a lot of romance. I read a lot of romance. I have read a lot of different spicy scenes. I've read a lot of different sex scenes that hasn't really bothered me. But this is kind of the first book to break me. And it really has, it's really broken me, right? And here's why. In many of the sex scenes, it would start off where things are going all right. It's going kind of nice. And then something happens and it just goes completely left. And it goes so far left that I am actively disengaged and I am disgusted. And that encapsulates the sex scenes in 50 Shades of Grey. But I don't just want to tell you about it. I want you to experience the pain that I experience as well. We are going to be sadomasochists together, okay? So, I am going to read you a scene from chapter 8, which is the first time that they have sex. Now, I'm going to spare you. I'm not going to read the entire scene because it's several pages. But I'm going to read you a part of the scene and I'm going to give you the context that leads up to the scene that I'm going to read. So, essentially, the way that they have sex the first time is as they are discussing the contract, no less. She decides to finally tell him that she's never had sex and that she hasn't really had any romantic experience. She's never really been kissed. She never really, just as I reiterated before, like she hasn't had any romantic or sexual experience. And Christian is shocked by this. But after his initial shock, he sees it as an opportunity for training. He wants to be the first one to make love to Anastasia. Yeah, so they talk about doing it together. He convinces her, he pleads, he begs with her, and she gives in. And she's like, okay, she already wants to do it with him, but him begging her to do so just pushes her even further into excitement. So this is how the scene starts off, essentially. He leads her back to his bedroom because they are at his condo. He leads her back to his bedroom. They start to, undress slowly. He starts to, kiss over her, kiss all over her body. He's taking his time to really get her aroused. And, he, of course, is becoming aroused as she is becoming aroused. Yeah, so after a while of him kissing her, he's really trying to get a gauge of what she has done and hasn't done. So he's like, hey, show me how you pleasure yourself. And she's like, I don't. And he's like, what? And she's like, I don't. I don't do that. So he's like, okay. So he just continues to go within. He's like, well, let's explore your body. Let's see what you like, right? So he starts, kissing over her body again. As I was saying, he's going around. Here's the first little weird red flag for me. As he's, as he, as he's kissing over her body, he comes towards her private area, and he literally like sticks his nose down. Imagine my mic is her private area. He sticks his nose right, right in, and he's like, oh, he's like, you smell so good, right? I busted out laughing, and luckily I was at home because I don't think I would have been able to contain it out in public. But yeah, so he, sniffs, get a good whiff up in there, and just lets her know like that she smells, good, right? So she's this is emotional support plushie. This is arousing to her, and so after that, he, like I said, he continues to kiss her body. He continues to like kind of, now he starts to oh, this is gonna get so messed up. He he starts to finger her and things like that. After that, he starts to do some nipple play with her. He starts to like get her nipples aroused and everything. She's really into it, so he's like, let's see if you can come in this way. And she does. She's really aroused by that. So he's pleased with himself. He continues going, right, because of course they're not done yet. So now it is time for the insertion parts, okay? And I'm going to read this for you guys. Now, as a just a note, I am very unserious, okay? And I did not take this book seriously. So as I read this thing, I was actively laughing throughout the entirety of it. But I was also discussed the part that you will see as well. And if I laugh, just know I apologize. Okay, let's get started. So this is after he gives her the orgasm from, playing with her nipples. This is right after that. Same time, Okay, this is in chapter 8. My breathing is ragged as I come down from my orgasm. His hand moves down my waist to my hips. Then he cups me intimately. Jeez. His finger slips through the fine lace and slowly circles around me. There. Briefly, he closes his eyes and his breathing hitches. I don't think I just read the line. I can do this. Okay. You're so deliciously wet. God, I want you. He thrusts his finger inside of me, and I cry out as he does it again and again. He palms my clitoris, and I cry out once more. Okay, he pushes inside me, harder and harder. Still, I groan. Okay, suddenly he sits up and tugs my panties off and throws them on the floor. Pulling off his boxer briefs, his erection springs free. Holy cow! That's the book. Okay, holy cow. He reaches over to his bedside table and grabs a foil packet. Okay, Then he moves between my legs, spreading them further apart. He kneels up and pulls a condom onto his considerable length. Oh no, will it? How? Don't worry, he breathes, his eyes on me. You expand too. He leans down. His hands on either side of my head, so he's hovering over me, staring down into my eyes, his jaw clenched, eyes burning. It's only now that I register he's still wearing his shirt. You really want to do this? He asked softly. Please, I beg. Pull your knees up, he orders softly, and I'm quick to obey. I'm going to F you now, Miss Steele, he murmurs as he positions the head of his erection at the end of my sex. Hard, he whispers, and he slams into me. Arr! I cry as I feel a weird pinching sensation deep inside me as he rips through my virginity. He stills, gazing down at me, his eyes bright with ecstatic triumph. His mouth is open slightly. His breathing is harsh. He groans. You're so tight. You okay? I nod, my eyes wide, my hands on his forearms. I feel so full. He stays still, letting me acclimatize to the intrusive, overwhelming feeling of him inside me. I'm going to move, baby, he says after a moment, his voice tight. Oh. He eases back with exquisite slowness. He closes his eyes, groans, and thrusts into me again. I cry out the second time, and he stills. More, he rasps, his voice raw. Yes. He does it once more and stills again. I groan, my body accepting him. Oh, I want this. Again, he breathes. Yes, it's a plea. And he moves, but this time he doesn't stop. He shifts onto his elbows so that I can feel his weight on top of me. Holding me down, he moves slowly at first, easing himself in and out of me as I grow accustomed to the alien feeling. My hips move tentatively to meet his. He speeds up. I moan, and he pounds on, picking up speed, merciless, a relentless rhythm, and I keep up, meeting his thrust. He grasps my head between his hands and kisses me hard, his teeth pulling at my lower lip again. He slips, oh my gosh, he slips. He shifts slightly, and I can feel something building deep inside me, like before. I start to stiffen as he thrusts on and on. My body quivers, bows. A sheen of sweat gathers over me. Oh my. I didn't know it would feel like this. I didn't know it would feel as good as this. My thoughts are scattering. There's only sensation, only him, only me. Oh, please, I stiffen. Come for me, Anna! He demands breathlessly, and I unravel at his words, exploding around him as I climax and splinter into a million pieces beneath him. And he comes. He calls out my name, thrusting hard, then stealing as he empties himself into me. Wow. Okay, I hope that you caught on to that. If you did not, the part that I say is just disgusting is the fact that he literally just rips into her body. He literally just inserts himself super duper hard into her. Now, mind you, she hasn't had sex before, so of course she's going to be very tight down there, and not only that, but this is a new sensation. And also, yes, even though she did orgasm before, if you aren't careful with having sex, you can get vaginal tears down there. And that is something that I'm scared of. So the fact that he didn't take the time and the precaution to just slowly ease into her for her first time, that I feel is a horrible choice and a horrible decision. I feel like if she would have gotten seriously hurt, then that would have became very traumatic. But yeah, so what I just read for you there is essentially kind of indicative of many of the other sex scenes in the book. They do a range of things. And there's literally a point in the book before she agrees to be his submissive, because they do just have regular sex with each other first. He calls it vanilla sex. They do have vanilla sex with each other for a little while first. And literally there's a point in the book where he literally is doing things with her for the purpose of it being like a check mark. And he's like, oh, we did this thing, okay. We did that thing, okay. We did that, okay. Now you're used to it. You're accustomed to it. You're good now. Now we can get to the hard stuff. Now we can get to the BDSM stuff. And that, I don't like that. All right, so let's talk a little more about when she actually does agree to become his submissive. Now, mind you, he made a big deal about this written contract, about all the things and all the rules within it. And even before presenting the contract to her, he just made such a big deal of, the contract itself. So once she decides to give him a verbal agreement, they literally start doing BDSM acts the same day and in the same moment. So I may not have mentioned this, I hope I did, but Christian has what he calls a playroom. She calls it a red room of pain. And pretty much this is a room within his house that has, all of his BDM materials. It's a sex room essentially. It has a bed, it has various sex toys, it has whips, it has chains, it has floggers, it has many other things that he mentions in his contract. It is within this room. So as he brings her into the room for their first act, he has rules for how she should present herself. So essentially she is to come into the room naked, except for panties. She has to have panties on, but everything else she has to be naked. She's gonna go by the edge of the bed, be bent down with her head down, and she has to wait for him to come and give her instructions. So she does that. He tells her what she wants him to do, and he tells her what he wants her to do, and she does that. So essentially from there, when they do their first BDSM scene, it's, he has a riding crop. He uses it to get her to completion. Then they do it on the bed. Then he kind of hangs her and has her body just completely bonded and open. And yeah, I don't know what to say. I just read y'all that part. So imagine that, but just with the introduction of sex tools and sex toys and the things that are in that contract. It's more. I don't know what else to say. to address about this book. And I didn't know where to really place this section because I don't know how to really talk about this because the book does not do a good job of talking about this. So I will do my best based strictly on what's shared within the first book. Because mind you, as I said before, I have read all the books before, but I just reread 50 Shades of Grey again this time. Okay, so Christian Grey was abused for a good portion of his life. I think I said near the beginning of the video that he was adopted. From what I remember, he was adopted around the age of 4, I believe. But before he was adopted, he was abused from his birth family. Now, I don't remember all the details of it, and in this book, it doesn't explain that it was from the first family, but I remember that from the second and third book. It kind of goes into it a little more there. But yes, he was abused, like, physically harmed. Like I said, from his birth family. But that is not the only abuse that he's dealt with in his life. He was also SA'd, since I can't say those words on YouTube, I don't think. He was SA'd by his adopted mother's best friend. And with that SA, she was the one who introduced him to the BDSM lifestyle at the age of 15. And Christian Grey was her submissive from the age of 15 to the age of 21. Now, here's where a lot of the problems come within how this book addresses this, or I would say the lack of the ways that it addresses this, because it doesn't really touch on it at all. It doesn't really condemn the actions of the woman. Her name is Elena Robinson. She, like I said, she is Christian's adoptive mother's best friend, and also his molester, essentially. But the way that the book addresses this is that it doesn't ever like really call it SA. When Christian talks about it, he's very laxed about it. He makes it clear and he says that it's not SA. He says that this was something that he consented to. And he says that Miss Robinson was helping to heal him. At the age of 15, this is a grown woman who was married. A grown married woman messing with a teenager. And I can't agree with that. Anastasia's reaction to him telling her this was no reaction at first. Her only reaction was just, wow, he was so young. Not, oh, that was messed up, or oh, like, you got some real trauma, or oh, like, I want to see you get help for this. There's none of that. It's just that. And even repeatedly through the book, even as Anastasia does kind of fight back with him about, the way that he sees the relationship that he had with Miss Robinson, He continues to make it seem like it's okay. He can, like I said, he really tries to sell it as though it's a consensual thing. And it's ironic to me, just to be a little political at the moment. Reading something like this is ironic to me now in 2025 when you have people like Megyn Kelly saying that you know, there's a difference between dealing with an 8-year-old and a 15-year-old. Both of them are underage. Both of them are unconsenting. A 15-year-old is not barely legal, it is illegal, right? And it stands in this case. That's not something that I'm going to argue about with anybody if someone wants to. But it's, I don't know, it's this is being written by someone. This is being written by E.L. James, right? And I will continue to say this. She says that the book is just, it is a love story and they have lots of kinky sex, right? But as I have reiterated throughout this video, it's not just that, you know? If you wanted to just make a simple love story with kinky sex, why did you include these elements if you're not going to address them, if you're not going to condemn them? Why would you include him having an abusive background and then say that it's unrelated to why he likes BDSM when the person who literally introduced him to BDSM is his molester? Like, why? There's never a moment really in the book that is actively condemned. It's anytime Anna challenges his view of his assault, his continuous assault, he challenges it back by essentially saying that he was cool with it and that he was not raped, right? And one of the reasons why I have an issue with this kind of perspective is because it's simply not written well at all. I have read books where it is from the victim's perspective and, you know, it's from a traumatic event or it's from something like, you know, a rape, or even in this case, a statutory rape that happened continuously into adulthood, and it's written much better. It's written in a sense where it's, you know, condemned. It's written with that kind of nuance. And I would say one of my favorite books that addresses this topic is a book called My Dark Vanessa. If you don't know what it's about, essentially it's about a girl named Vanessa who essentially gets into a relationship with her high school teacher. The teacher, you know, he, you know, rapes her essentially. He rapes her, you know, from the time that she's a teenager well into her adulthood. And it really explores her mentality, you know, from the beginning, middle, and end of that entire relationship, right? It does have a scene where it depicts, you know, what sex was like for them and things like that. But it's not written in a way that you, as the reader, are getting enjoyment from it. It's very much condemned, right? It's graphic to illustrate the point of how wrong it is. And it really takes a lot of skill to be able to write in that way. And that was not depicted in 50 Shades of Grey. And it really is disappointing because there is a nuance that can be brought with someone who is a skilled writer, who can write about a man being a victim of sexual assault and bring the seriousness that it needs to really be discussed, because this does happen to men. You know, it happens to men, it happens to women. But the fact that it's just brushed off so easily is really, it really is a problem, you know. And I don't know what else to say beyond that. Just that it's a major problem in this book, and the ease in which it's brushed off is a problem as well. But you know, this is just supposed to be, you know, a love story with kinky sex. Yeah, but I think it's, you know, also important to recognize that his experience with abuse really does affect the relationship that him and Anna have. It really brings more context into why he needs to have this kind of control. It really brings more context as to how he can be a multi-millionaire playboy with all these sexual experiences, but has never been in an actual romantic relationship. I think that his trauma really reflects on the way that he treats Anna and the need for control that he has over her. So even though I've read, you know, a few parts of this book, and I've made a few points here and all that stuff, and I've talked about, you know, how problematic some of the things that he's done, you know, is, it just, I don't know, it really adds the layers to it. You know, to me, it makes more sense when you think about it from that perspective. And this is not to excuse the actions, because I'm not doing that at all, but it does bring more to the character, but it's not addressed well because she does not write it well. Not only does she not write it well, but she doesn't address it. She just throws things down and just leaves it, and doesn't guide. Not to say that the reader needs their hand held, but when you're writing something like this that is getting viewed on a global scale with people who have actually been in situations like this before, it's important to show your stance on where you see something like that. And the fact that she chose not to is problematic to me. Okay, so at this point, I have been talking about this book for hours, and I'm gonna hate to see how long this video is, but I do think that it really is important for me to talk about the ending, because the ending was one of the driving points for why I wanted to reread this book. When I read it the first time as a teenager, I thought the ending was stupid. And I wanted to see if in the present day my opinion would change. And it has. So let me break down the ending essentially for you. So essentially, Christian and Anna have been doing the BDSM stuff for a little bit. And mind you, as I said, and I've said several times before, she never actually signed the contract. Like I said, she did give him a verbal agreement, that she would, be his submissive, but she never actually signed her name on any dotted line. So with that, even though they are doing the BDSM stuff, she still does have the power to refuse him at any moment. She still has the power to change her mind and essentially say that, she doesn't want to be a submissive. And, she kind of goes back and forth with the idea for a while, because not only are they doing, the more pleasurable BDSM acts, but, sometimes, she is getting the pain aspect as well. She is getting the punishment aspect as well. The first time that she really received the punishment from Christian was when she rolled her eyes at him. He does not like her rolling her eyes. So, he spanked her. And then they had sex afterwards. And that left her into a ball of confusion. But I say that to say, they go back and forth with that for a while. They're doing the BDSM stuff, for, like I said, for the most part, it's pleasurable. There's a few moments where, he punishes her for, whatever little thing. And, she doesn't like the punishments, which I can imagine, because, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit different, but what grown adult, wants to be spanked, for rolling their eyes? What grown adult wants to be flogged, or caned or something like that? Now, I know that there are people out there that do seek that. I'm not one of those people. And I'm not judging. It's just, as I said, I am not one of those people. So, after, participating in the BDSM stuff for a couple of weeks, she isn't completely sold on if she wants to be a full-on submissive for Christian, because in a way she's kind of being like a part-time submissive. So she decides that, she has like, a lot of confusion, because one, she wants a full-on relationship with him. Like I said earlier in this video, she wants to just be like regular boyfriend, girlfriend. He does not have the full capacity to give her that right now. Yes, he's doing like, little things that are a little more romantic because she's asking for it, but it's not something that's coming naturally to him yet. So that's his pushback, is that he doesn't feel like he can be a full-on romantic boyfriend yet. He doesn't, even though he's emotionally invested in her, he doesn't feel like he can give her that fully. And for her, she is not sure if she just wants to settle for being a submissive, and if she just wants to settle for what she's getting right now. So this is where the beginning of the end happens. So she decides to take some time away from Christian, a few days, and she goes to visit her mom in Georgia. As she's in Georgia, before she leaves for Georgia, she tells Christian, like, hey, I need a little bit of time. This is a lot for me. Give me a few days, and I'll give you an answer on if I'm essentially going to be a full-time submissive or not. So he reluctantly is like, okay, I'll give you the time you asked for. So as I said, she goes to visit her mom in Georgia. Once she gets to Georgia, she spends some time with her mom and her new stepdad. She gets a little rejuvenated and all that stuff. So she starts to kind of message him like a day into her being in Georgia. And essentially she just tells him like, hey, like, I miss you, right? Like, that's what couples do, right? Like, you're like, oh, I miss you. I wish you were here or whatever. But you still want that time to yourself, right? Right? Now, I'm going to circle this back to where I was saying earlier about boundaries being broken. As I said, she established with him that she needed a few days, right? But when she told this man over email that she missed him, he took that literally and he hopped on the flight, came all the way to Georgia where she was. And I believe I said this earlier in the video, but I'll say it again. He knew where her family was staying. He knew where her mom and her were having dinner. And he literally showed up to the restaurant that they were at. And essentially, surprised her, with his presence. Since she said, I miss you. I wish you were here kind of stuff. He took that literally. And to me, he's not dumb, right? I don't think that he's dumb at all. So it's kind of like, I feel like once he kind of got the idea that she was slipping through his fingers, he was like, okay, I gotta lock in, right? Which led to him being there. So yeah, so as Christian is now with her in Georgia, she decides that she really wants to talk to him seriously, about their relationship. So, Christian is staying at a hotel, so she decides to stay with Christian and, and talk things out. Of course, they don't do much talking because it does become about the, sex. He lays it down on her and she, she takes it because she wants it. And then, now there was a moment that I thought was a nice reprieve. The next day after he comes to Georgia, pretty much he surprises her on like a spontaneous date. Now, one of the things that he does like on one of his hobbies is gliding. So he decides to wake her up super early in the morning, doesn't tell her where they're going, but he takes her gliding. And it was actually a cute little moment. I'm like, okay, this is actually cute. That was one of the parts. That was one part that actually felt good while reading. Didn't last long, but I have one part, okay? After they do gliding, essentially they make plans for Christian, have dinner with like her family and all that stuff, but those plans get cut short because there's some serious stuff going on with his business. So things are going down. Anastasia doesn't know what's going down, but things are happening. So he essentially is like, hey, I'm sorry. I know we made plans, but I gotta get back to Seattle because there's some stuff going down with my business. So she's like, okay, right? So she's a little bummed, but she takes it in stride. She tries to make the most of the last few days that she has on her trip with her family. And, yeah. So once she gets back to Seattle, she's excited to see him. She really wants to talk with him further about the contract and what that means for their relationship. Now, he is closed off because, things are going down with his business. Now, she doesn't know what things are going down, but she just knows that it's really affecting him because he's not acting like himself with her. Like I said, he's more closed off. He's more dismissive. He's even more about the sex, if you can believe that, rather than being more of the romantic little parts that he was doing for her before. So literally the next day after she returns back to Seattle, she decides that, she really does want to have a serious conversation with Christian. So, essentially she talks with him and she's like, hey, I want to review the terms of the contract. I just want to see like, what's going to really go down between us if I agree to be your submissive in this way. So it is at this point where he essentially is like, well, I don't know why you want to review the contract because it's moot at this point. And she's shocked. She's like, moot? And he's like, yeah. So essentially he's saying the contract doesn't matter. And at this point, I gotta be honest, I don't disagree, because you already have done all the things, well, not all the things, but you've already been doing these submissive actions without, you've already been doing the things without having to sign anything. So this piece of paper, well, these pieces of paper essentially don't matter now. And as I said earlier in the beginning of this, well, not in the beginning, but as I said earlier in this review, the real contract that mattered was the NDA, and you didn't take no time to read that. So here we are. As they are talking about this contract, and as I said, essentially Christian says that, you know, the contract doesn't matter. She initially really asked him like, okay, well, why did you change your mind then, right? And he says that it was before he really got more invested in her, before he really, you know, liked her, right? And really his main point of bringing this contract was because, you know, he was afraid that she would leave him if she was really more introduced into his BDSM lifestyle, and he didn't want her to just run away and be scared. So now that they've been doing these acts even without her signing the contract, he's like, okay, I know you won't leave now. Like, you know, we good now. Like, we've been doing this, so I know you're not scared, essentially. But for her, she still has hesitation because, as I've said several times, you know, she wants a relationship. He doesn't. They're at two different crossroads, and honestly, they shouldn't really be together. So I'm going to read you the text of them having this conversation so that way you can get the full grasp of what they're talking about. So this is in the last chapter, and she tells Christian that she wants to talk about them and their relationship. So I'm going to start reading from here. So she says, well, so he says, what about us? He pauses, his trail of kisses along my shoulder. The contract. He lifts his head to gaze down at me, a hint of amusement in his eyes, and sighs. He strokes his fingertips down my cheek. Well, I think the contract is moot, don't you? His voice is low and husky, his eyes soft. Moot? Moot, he smiles. But you were so keen. Well, that was before. Anyway, the rules aren't moot. They still stand. His expression hardens slightly. Before? Before what? Before? He pauses, and weary expression is back. More, he shrugs. Oh. Besides, we've been in the playroom twice now, and you haven't run screaming for the hills. Do you expect me to? Nothing you do is expected, Anastasia. So let me be clear. You want me to follow the rules element of the contract all the time, but not the rest of the contract? Except in the playroom. I want you to follow the spirit of the contract in the playroom. And yes, I want you to follow the rules all the time. Then I know you'll be safe, and I'll have you anytime I wish. And if I break one of the rules, then I'll punish you. But you won't need my permission. Yes, I will. And what if I say no? He gazes at me for a moment with a confused expression. If you say no, you'll say no. And I'll have to find a way to persuade you. I pull away from him and I stand. I need some distance. So after that moment, you know, they really talk about the contract a little more. And just as he says, you know, if she says no, you know, to his wanting of punishments for her, then, you know, he would have to persuade her. So that literally kind of takes action after they talk about the contract. Because essentially, like, she rolls her eyes at him again, right? Now she's doing this to provoke him, because she already knows that he doesn't like when she rolls her eyes. So he's like, okay, you know, you rolled your eyes, I'm gonna have to punish you now, right? So she's like, you're gonna have to catch me first, right? So essentially they run around his kitchen, you know, and he catches her for a minute, but then they talk, and as they're talking, you know, he is really asking her about, like, you know, well, you seriously don't like the punishment aspect? And she's like, no. And she makes a comparison saying that, you know, it makes me feel as bad as you feel about being touched. Because I don't think I've mentioned this, but he doesn't really like to be touched, especially around the chest area, because of the abuse that he had before. Now, that's not fully explained in this book, in the first book, but it does get explained in the other books. But yeah, he does not like to be touched. Like I said, especially in the chest area. So for him, that's shocking to him, because, you know, that's not positive association. He thought that the punishments for her were a positive association, but it's not. So they continue to talk more about, you know, the idea of punishment and what it means for her and all that stuff. And she tells him that, you know, as she's said many times in this book, that she doesn't like the punishments, but she does it for him because he likes it. You know, it's something that helps him. It's something that gets him off. But now he has concerns, and he's afraid because he feels like, you know, she would leave him in a sense. And if he fully lets himself go, then she would leave him. Which leads to the actual ending of the book. And with the actual ending of the book, they do break up. Now, I'm going to tell you what happens, and I'm going to read the text for you so you can get context as well. So, essentially from this moment, Anastasia does ask Christian to punish her at his worst, so that way she can get a full grasp of what it's like to be punished by him. And the fair trade that she gets in this punishment is that she will be able to touch him. So essentially, he goes on to punish her. And the way that he punishes her is by spanking, right? But it's not just regular spanking, like it is a whooping. He hits her 6 times with a belt. And she is so shocked by that she literally just cannot handle it. So, I'm going to read the lead up to that, and then I will continue to explain just as I've stated before, just now. So this is also from the last chapter. This is the man in need. His fear is naked and obvious, but he's lost, somewhere in his darkness. His eyes are wide and bleak and tortured, and I can soothe him, join him briefly in the darkness, and bring him to the light. Show me, I whisper. Show you. Show me how much it can hurt. What? Punish me. I want to know how bad it can get. Christian steps back away from me, completely confused. You would try? Yes, I said I would, but I have an ulterior motive. If I do this for him, maybe he will let me touch him. He blinks. Anna, you're so confusing. I'm confused too. I'm trying to work this out. And you and I will know once and for all, if I can do this, if I can handle this, then maybe you, my words fail me, and his eyes widen again. He knows I am referring to the touch thing. For a moment he looks torn, but then a steely resolve settles on his features, and he narrows his eyes, gazing at me speculatively as if weighing up alternatives. Abruptly, he clasps my arm in a firm grip and turns, leading me out of the great room, up the stairs and into the playroom. Pleasure and pain, reward and punishment, his words from long ago echo through my mind. I'll show you how bad it can be, and you can make up your own mind. He pauses by the door. Are you ready for this? I nod, my mind made up, and I'm vaguely lightheaded, faint as all the blood leaves my face. He opens the door, still grasping my arm, grabs what looks like a belt from the rack beside the door, and then leads me over to the red leather bench in the far corner of the room. Bend over the bench, he mutters softly. Okay, I can do this. I bend over the smooth, soft leather. He's left my bathrobe on, and in the quiet part of my brain, I'm vaguely surprised that he hasn't made me take it off. Holy F, this is gonna hurt. I know. We're here because you said yes, Anastasia, and you ran from me, and I'm going to hit you 6 times, and you will count with me. Why the heck doesn't he get on with it? He always makes such a meal of punishing me. I roll my eyes, knowing full well he can't see me. He lifts the hem of my bathrobe, and for some reason it feels more intimate than being naked. He gently caresses my behind, running his warm hand over both cheeks down the tops of my thighs. I'm doing this so you remember not to run from me, and as exciting as it is, I never want you to run from me, he says. And the irony is not lost on me. I was running to avoid this. If he'd opened his arms, I'd run to him, not away from him. And you rolled your eyes at me. You know how I feel about that. Suddenly it's gone. The nervous, edgy fear in his voice. He's back from wherever he's been. I hear it in his tone, in the way he places his fingers on my back, holding me. The atmosphere in the room changes. I close my eyes, bracing myself for the blow. It comes hard, snapping against my backside, and the bite of the belt is everything I feared. I cried out involuntarily and take a huge gulp of air. Now I'm gonna pause there. From there, he continues to, as I said, he hits her with the belt 6 times. And usually after they have sex, usually after he punishes her, usually after anything really happens, on the BDSM side, a big part of BDSM is aftercare. So pretty much you're supposed to, the dominant is supposed to take care of the submissive of whatever pleasure, pain that they felt, and is really supposed to help navigate them through it. So he goes on to try to do aftercare, right, after hitting her with this belt. And she refuses it, right, because she's shocked. She really can't believe that he went that far with her, even though this is something that she asked for. She asked for it, but was not prepared for it. And, so, after a while, she kind of cusses him out a little bit, and she kind of needs a moment, so she goes away from him. She goes to a separate room, and she tries to kind of, get her mind a little straight. He's still trying to essentially, take care of her, and she's not really going for it. So she has a moment of, just really mourning the way that she viewed him and the way that she viewed his relationship, because for her, for some reason, she really can't believe that he would be sexually and physically turned on by the idea of hurting her. She doesn't understand that him hurting her really is really important to him, you know, for various reasons. And I'm not saying that to make an excuse of it. It's just, you know, his psychology, this Christian Grey psychology. So essentially, like, you know, she just takes some more time. He comes and consoles her. They do have like a small discussion afterwards, and essentially she just comes to him and she's like, I don't think that I can do this. You know, if this is the highest level of pain that I can experience, I don't think that this is something that I really want to sign up for. And so she confirms, you know, his worst fear in the sense of her leaving. And I guess she confirmed her own worst fears of really being seriously hurt by him. Because even though, you know, the pain of the spanking is going to heal, she does have some emotional trauma from this now. Essentially, after that, she really does break up with him at the end of the book. And that is how the book ends. The book ends with her crying in bed about breaking up with Christian and about him being into BDSM and all of that stuff. Now mind you, this book, as I said, really took place within like a month and a half at most. They both fell for each other very hard, very fast. When I read the book initially, I did not like the ending because, as I said, I thought it was stupid. I thought it was stupid. I really felt like, you know, how can you be mad at him for something that you asked for? You asked for him to give you his worst, and he did that, you know. But now that I'm a little older, I do see more of the nuance in it because, yes, she did ask for him to give her his worst. And he did that, right? But I think their incompatibility, you know, both of them wanting different things, as I keep reiterating, her wanting a relationship and him just wanting the BDSM relationship, you know, makes them really incompatible. But also just the fact that, like, he can get off on hurting her, and that's not something that she can understand, and that's not something that she can get behind. I think that those things are very important to recognize. Hey y'all, editing cast back again, and I have another interview really quick. I just wanted to show this interview from Time, which follows E.L. James on one of her book tours, and pretty much it's showing not only the kind of women who enjoyed this book, but their perspective. I found this interview to be very insightful because it really showed how this book became so popular. So I'm going to leave my past self to take over this part. This is a video from Time magazine that they did with E.L. James in 2012. And it shows one of the, not only is it an interview, but it shows one of the stops that she did for her book tour and the reaction that some of her fans have had to this book. So let's take a look at it and let's see their opinions.
discovered the books, I would think the way that most people did. It was word of mouth, passing of a whisper. My friend Vanessa came up to me and said, "Did you read 50 Shades of Grey?" And I said, "No, I've been in a writing slump." And she said, "You need to read it, and you need to do it now, and you need to wear a panty liner."
Okay.
The night of the event, I was sweating. I was schwitzing. They came in droves. They came in limos. They came in car services. They drove in Long Island, Westchester, Connecticut, New York City, uptown, downtown. They were all there to see the LG. I'm completely and utterly stunned by the reaction to these books. I'm completely gobsmacked. Just having it on my own Facebook page, I had 650 RSVPs for this event in 2 days. Basically, it's a love story. A love story with a kink is what I like to call it. I wrote the books for myself. It's my fantasy writ large. In Christian, I created this kind of mystery man. He's very good looking. He's very good at sex. He's disgustingly rich. He's everyone's dream, in a way. Well, he's certainly my dream. His answering grin is dazzling. He opens up the book, he speeds around the fair lady and out onto the sea once more. And I think I read Twilight, and I loved it. And then I discovered Twilight fan fiction, and then I came up with the idea for what would eventually become 50 Shades, and I wrote that.
Because I was also a huge Twilight fan, and why do we love it so much? First of all, the way you write is unbelievable, the castle comes there, and second, it's a sense of security, like when you found her at the bar, when Robert Pattinson found her when she was about to get raped, like, well, it's like a sense of security, a little jealousy, and good sex. So, and the way you describe it is... Now it's doing the right thing at the right time.
Okay, she just made a very interesting point about 50 Shades being about security. I think what they're reading is a fantasy. Not to say that there isn't security and stuff, but you shouldn't have to be in a distressing situation for a man to come and save you like a damsel in distress. Yeah. Also, I have not read Twilight. I don't have any plans on reading it, so I can't speak on that part. But hey, you know, to each his own.
My husband was a little jealous. He didn't say that he was jealous, but he was a little short with me. At first, it was cute with him. But then when I was not paying attention and reading at night, as opposed to watching a show that we usually watch together, he would get a little bit of like, you reading that book again? I'm like, well, that book is gonna get you lucky later, so.
After you have a child, sometimes, you know, you just like, everything changes in your life. It's about your children, and it's about your career, your job, your work, your home, whatever it is. And sometimes you forget to
At the book signing, someone told me that they had never had an orgasm before, and then 43 years old, and they had an orgasm. Someone told me they had an orgasm just reading the book, and I just thought, really? What's your name again? And just signed the book very quickly. I mean, you know, it was extraordinary.
I love when she uses the periods for emphasis. It changes the whole dynamic of the writing. You are so beautiful, he breathes. I stare up at his dear, dear face, bathed in the intensity of his gaze. It's as if he's seeing me for the first time.
I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me. I curl up in his lap, inhaling his heavenly Christian smell, feeling safe regardless of the fact that he's mad. Me neither. Wear what you like, he murmurs. He runs his hand up my bare leg to my thigh. Besides, this dress has its advantages. And before I'm even aware of it, he's unzipping his pants, pulling me astride his lap, and sinking into me. I grasp the back of the chair, my feet just touching the ground, and we start to move.
Men are visual. You know, you walk in lingerie, they immediately are like, oh my God, yes, that's what I want. Women are not necessarily that. For me, it was that voice that was in this book, Christian's voice. Like everyone's trying to cast Christian, and yeah, there are all these beautiful actors that I see out there, but for me, it's my husband's voice. I think that's it also. I think I was reading the book and I think I became Anna a little bit. Not that they were so similar. I mean, we are in certain ways that I like the way she kind of, you know, stood up for herself, but we all want to be taken control of a little.
And that is how this book became so successful. Now, for me, Anna, the character, was not a self-insert for me, but I personally believe that I have the understanding and the empathy to not have to be exactly like someone to be able to enjoy the story. And I'm not saying that these women can't enjoy a story with someone that's not like them, but I really think that the reason that this book has become so popular, especially within a specific demographic, is because it does serve as a self-insert for them. Just as one of the women said in the earlier part of the video, which is that, you know, they are mothers. They get so wrapped up into their own lives that they can forget to just have sex with their partners. I am not in that position. I am a single 26-year-old female living in Chicago. I have no kids, and that I can empathize, but I am not in that position to know what that is like. Also, this audience, when you look at the video and you see the people that are in the room, you see exactly who this book was really made for. And that's perfectly fine. There's something for everybody. But it just shows why it was not for me. But let's continue.
Okay.
Kind of what I've noticed is that what Anna achieved in the book is not something that you spell out, but what she has really done is change this man. And
This woman, female character changed this man. And I think that's really at the core of it, where we can't change our mates. And we are told this by every psychologist on every show and in every magazine article. You cannot change your man. Men, you cannot change your woman. And she changed him. And
that's another point that is important to emphasize. There are many moments in this book where it is explicitly clear that she is changing Christian, and this woman just pointed that out, right? But to me personally, this is a fantasy. I do have the personal belief that you cannot change someone, man or woman. I feel like if someone wants to change, it comes internally, it comes from within. You can help to aid them in that change, but you yourself cannot be the driving force of change for someone. You cannot make someone change. They may make momentary adjustments for you, but their overall character probably won't change. So I definitely think that that is the work of this book, playing into that fantasy of not only being, you know, the unassuming woman, but being the woman that can change a man, that can bend a man to their will just because of who they are and just because they desire them and they want them. As I said, for me, I think that that is a work of fiction, but here we are.
I think that's a huge attraction for women who have been married and going through life and raising their children. that, wow, she actually did it. None of us did it, but she did.
That's the fantasy side of it.
It's a decision that you have to make. Do I want to go with this beautiful, flawed, damaged man or not? Because he comes with so much baggage. He has a lot of baggage. He is a fixer-upper.
It was a little bit about the sexual part, but it was mostly about this innocent woman who was able to change Mr. Gray. I felt like the diva in her empowered her. And that was the uplifting part of the book, the romance part, the changing, the giving into each other.
They like to think that love can conquer all and redeem and heal. And I mean, the story is about unconditional love, really, underneath it all, I think.
Oh my. He wants me. Christian Grey, Greek god, wants me. And I want him. Here, now in the elevator. Honestly, I can't even breathe. Hold on one second.
I think that interview was important to look at because it really shows the more positive general reaction of what this book represented for people, specifically what it represented for this group of women who are married mothers, you know, who get lost in their own lives and who may just need a pick-me-up, I guess. As I've iterated several times, I am not of that camp. So of course this was not made with someone like me in mind, and that's fine. But it just goes to show more of things that I'll continue to explain in this video. Things I just did not like within the book. But yeah, so that's a little bit of public perception, a little bit of public background for you guys. I have to be honest. I can't believe that I spent a majority of my day talking about 50 Shades of Grey. And I am so sorry to all of you that somehow miraculously watched till the end, if you actually watched till the end. If you didn't, I completely understand. I really do. But as I am reaching the end of my thoughts and as I am getting towards the end of this video, of course I have to give my overall thoughts, my overall review, right? So let's do that. To me, 50 Shades of Grey was disappointing. And I've already stated several of the reasons throughout this video, but just to reiterate the point, it was disappointing because the writing wasn't done well. You know, the characters are one-dimensional. They have no goals, no motivations. They have no real reason for me to be not only invested in them as individual characters, but also invested in their relationship. As I was reading this, I really felt that there was no real reason to root for Anna and Christian, right? Now, for this to be a romance book, you want the characters to be together. You want them, you want to root for them. You want to see them have the happily ever after, right? And you don't get that because there's not any weight to them. All of the side characters fall in the same category. You know, they're inconsequential. You know, they don't exist. And when they do exist, they only exist to just move the plot further. And that is what it is. It's whatever, right? Also, just there's so many things that if there was a more skilled writer, that this book could be explored much better. Everything from the relationship dynamic between Christian and Anna, the abuse that Christian went through, the idea of trying to be in a relationship with someone, one when you're inexperienced, could be an interesting topic. I don't think it was really done well in this book. The idea of being in a relationship with someone after going through sexual trauma could be an interesting idea. It was not done well in this book. For the author to simply say, "Oh, you know, this is a love story with just kinky sex." As I've stated, you know, she added these other elements that just make that she doesn't expand on, and therefore it makes the book worse. If she really just stuck to that and really just wrote just a simple, basic, fantastical romance about this girl next door meeting this billionaire man and them having a, you know, BDSM relationship, there's enough there that could have been explored. The things that she added to this book really did not enhance anything. And for that, it's disappointing. Also, there just isn't enough weight on the different elements for me to fully sink into one of the things or not. There isn't the sex scenes are not good enough for me to fully be interested in them, and it's hard for me to really see it as neurotic fiction, even though it is neurotic fiction. It is neurotic romance. You know, they do have a lot of sex, but as I've stated, I was so disengaged, I was so detached during those scenes that I can't even look at that part and be like, ooh, like spicy stuff. No. As I stated, I don't care enough about Christian and Anna as individual characters, and definitely not as a couple. So as I'm reading, I'm not really caring for them. So I can't go with that either. Honestly, the book is just truly subpar for me. I really think that it's subpar, and since it's subpar, it is disappointing for me. Honestly, with this book, you know how there's like movies where people can say, oh, you know, it's so bad that it's good. You know, for me, I feel like I can't even say that with this book, because ironically, the things that I liked about this book, well, actually not even like, the things that kept me engaged with this book was not intentionally done by the author. Like, me doing this whole video about the relationship dynamics and about, you know, the different parts and the different scenes and all that stuff, the author did not make this book with that intentionality. She did not write this relationship with the intention of it being critiqued in the way that I am critiquing it and other people are critiquing it. She did not write this book as a form of social commentary. You know, I believe that the purpose of this book was really just to, you know, for her to use it as an outlet for herself and to really be entertaining, you know. And there are people that just so happen to connect with it, and from that it became a big thing, right? But like I said, the elements that I was intrigued by, you know, were more so my own questions that I brought to the book before reading. You know, like I said, it was my own curiosity of, is it really that bad? You know, what is the relationship dynamics really like? You know, is he really manipulating her? Is he really doing this and that? Those are questions that I brought, but it's not something that she is intentionally addressing, right? So as I'm reading this, it's kind of like, it's a bit appalling in a way, because there's a lot of things, you know, as I stated earlier, that's just so brushed off and so lax that, like, I can't give her the credit of saying that, you know, this is really a good book, or that it's so bad that it's good. Now, for me personally, I don't rate books by star ratings anymore, but I know that there are people that do value that kind of metric. So if I was to leave a Goodreads review or a Storygraph review, my rating of this book would be a 1 star out of 5, because of all the things that I've mentioned before, and for all of the reasons that I've mentioned before. I think that it is disappointing. There's a lot that's lacking in this book. If there was a writer that was more skilled to address these topics, then it could have gotten a better rating. If she was to rewrite this and address these topics better, then it could get a better rating, you know, for me, if I ever decide something like that was happening. But it's not going to, you know. The books are published, they are what they are. It is what it is. It's whatever. As I'm closing out this video, I do want to make some recommendations of books that I think are better than 50 Shades of Grey. Not only do some of these books have some similar themes compared to 50 Shades of Grey, but they are also addressed better. Now, the books that I'm going to mention are not like direct one-to-one comparisons, but like I said, they have similar elements, similar themes. So let's talk about it. So the first book that I would say is the most direct comparison to 50 Shades of Grey, but is 10 times, 50 times, 100 times better, is the Bare to You series by Sylvia Gray. Oh my gosh, Sylvia Gray. Sylvia Day. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the Bare to You series does have many similar themes to 50 Shades of Grey, but it is very different. It is approached very different. All of the emphasis that I've been making about having a skilled writer talking about these themes, it is addressed in this book. So I'm not gonna go into full detail about what it's about, but essentially it's about a couple named Eva and Gideon. They both, you know, have an attraction to each other. It is an erotic romance, so there is a lot of sex. Now, mind you, these sex scenes are better. They're so much better. So with Eva and Gideon, it's similar in the sense that, you know, they meet each other. They have this kind of instant attraction. They both want each other, and then they both kind of start a relationship with each other. It is kind of like a BDSM relationship, but instead of it being more of the emphasis on the bondage and sadomasochism part, it really is more about the dominant and submissive relationship between those two. And also, Gideon is not trying to control Eva's life, and Eva is not trying to control Gideon's life. They both are similar in the sense that they both have similar traumas and they both work together to get through those traumas. Also, they both have a better relationship compared to Anna and Christian because both of them have similar backgrounds. Both of them come from money and come from wealth. Like I said, both of them have similar traumas, so they both work together to heal through their traumas. And they just have an overall better understanding of each other. And the writing, I cannot emphasize this more. The writing is much better. So I would say if someone wants to read something like 50 Shades of Grey but doesn't want to read 50 Shades of Grey, then read this. Read Bare to You. It is a much better series by miles of 50 Shades of Grey. This book I already mentioned earlier in the video, but I'm going to mention it again. It is called My Dark Vanessa. This book to me is really important because, as I said, it talks about, one girl, Vanessa, her experience going through, statutory rape by her teacher, frequent statutory rape. And it really does bring that perspective of, as I said, of a victim who can't recognize that they're a victim and the way that their mind kind of goes through that process. And also that theme, similar themes is kind of brought up in Bare to You as well, because as I was talking earlier about trying to build a relationship when you've been through trauma, that comes up in Bare to You. So that's another reason to read that book. But back to My Dark Vanessa, I think that it's a book that I really enjoy reading. So yeah, the last two books that I'm going to mention, as I said, are not direct one-to-one comparisons for 50 Shades of Grey, but they do have similar elements. So the next book that I'm going to mention is a mafia romance book called Broken Whispers. And with this book, it's simple. Like, it gets to the point. Like I said, it's a mafia romance. So you're going to get the mafia parts of it, but you're also going to get the romantic parts of it. There's an arranged marriage, but that arranged marriage turns into, love and things like that. But one of the elements that is presented in this book is the female character went through sexual assault. And pretty much she's working with her now husband, on getting through that trauma. And they both work together. They both build trust to be able to get through the traumas that both of them have, but specifically that for her as well. And since 50 Shades and BDSM is so big, well, not 50 Shades, but BDSM is so big on, building trust and having open communication and consent. Those themes are really present in that book, Broken Whispers. So if you're looking for something similar in that sense, it's presented there. And the last book that I am going to recommend is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This book, like I said, it's not a direct comparison of 50 Shades of Grey, but it still has that similar theme of trying to love someone after dealing with trauma. How do you approach that? How do you go through that? It's kind of shown in that book. I would say it's explored in that book, and it's explored in a better way than it will ever be done in 50 Shades. Finally, I will make this point. erotic romances and romances in general have existed for a long time. They've existed before 50 Shades of Grey and they exist after 50 Shades of Grey. I think 50 Shades of Grey in its publishing really puts romance on the map for a different type of reader. There are a variety of books, things like Harlequin romances, things like books from Zane and books from Mary B. Morrison. All of these things have existed before 50 Shades of Grey. They were already kind of pushing the envelope of romance and exotic romance before 50 Shades of Grey was even contrived. So I say this to say, if you do want to read something like this, I think that that's fine. But I would say if you want to read 50 Shades of Grey specifically, or the series specifically, do not take it seriously. Even though I just did this long video and I just gave you all of these notes and all of my thoughts, at the end of the day, after this, I will stop this and I will not be thinking about this again really seriously. And even as I read it, I didn't have a bad experience. I didn't hate what I was reading. It was fine. But I didn't take it seriously because honestly, it's not meant to be taken seriously. So I am giving it what it was meant. Okay? I will reiterate the point that for authors that are not white, they don't get to skirt around certain issues that are presented in this book if they choose to present them in their books. So with that being said, read diverse books. Some of the best romances that I have read have been from diverse authors. Two of my favorite romances, one, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and two, This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan, both of them Black women, right? And their stories are so real, they're so grounded, while also still having that whimsy that romance can bring. So if this is something that you're interested in getting into, then find a diverse writer, a diverse author, and read those books, support those books. And that's my stance at the end of the day. So, with that being said, I am going to leave it up to the comments for anybody who's made it this far. You can tell me, if you know me interpersonally, you can tell me, or if you want to share it in the comments, please do so. But I am debating on reading the second and third book. I feel like it would probably be good for me to complete this trilogy because I know that there's so much more that happens. Now, you guys, this video was long. Can you imagine if I read the second and third book? But I'll say this. If people want me to read it, I am a person of the people. I will read it. If no one's interested in it, that's completely fine. But let me know what you think. And if you made it this far, let me know what you think about the video. Let me know if I have introduced you to something new. Let me know if you have thoughts based on what I said, if you've read the book or not read the book. Just get in the comments, get in the field with me, give me a little bit of discourse so I'm not crazy by myself, so I am not being a sadomasochist by myself. Let's share in the sadomasochism, okay? I'm joking. Or am I? But I am joking. But yeah, if you've taken the time to get this far, thank you. I really appreciate it. And who knows if I will ever make another video again, but if I do, then it will be right here on this channel. Thank you. Bye.
Grabbing my upper thighs, he forces my legs apart. I groan loudly, feeling his tongue circling my clitoris. Oh my. Oh my.